The momentum only picks up from here, folks. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here to talk about the first edition Pathfinder Oracle's second and third level spells, or rather, a selection of them that are going to yield a great deal of mechanical benefit for you, and for a wide variety of different kinds of Oracle builds. Now, with that said, these are just guides, and to be honest, they're not guides covering every single last effective spell. We would be here for quite a long time if that were the case, and also, as I said, these are just guides. They're not meant to be set in stone or followed to the exact letter. It's more meant to be kind of a helpful aid to let you pick out things that are going to be more mechanically effective or less mechanically effective, and then, let you go from there and customize your character to fit whatever build, theme, idea, or whatever is just fitting for you that brings you joy and happiness at the table. You go with that. This is just meant to be helpful suggestions. But before we get into what exactly we have on offer for you today, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now let's actually start talking about your second level spells, and the first one we have for you here is a pretty interesting one, and that's Bloody Tears and Jagged Smile. You target yourself to start weeping blood and have teeth grow jagged and razor sharp, granting a 1d3 if you're small or 1d4 if you're medium character bite attack. This also grants you a +4 profane bonus to intimidate checks and on your spell save DCs, specifically for spells with the fear descriptor. Now, that does seem limiting at first, but fear spells do quite a lot for you, and running your opponents down that fear track of debuffs, shaken, frightened, panicked, and the like, are significantly beneficial. To the point that we actually have one here for you, Mortal Terror. Select one creature in 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 levels and force a will save. On failure, the target is shaken, and the first time it takes damage, it must succeed on another will save or have its fear level increase from shaken to frightened, and frightened to panicked, then to being helpless if they're damaged again from the panic state. On success, the target is shaken for just 1 round. So this is something that lasts and progresses each time you hit the target. Now, being an Oracle, you don't have the best base attack bonus progression, but you're going to have access to plenty of spells that will buff your ability to strike your opponents, and some of the targets you're going to be specifically going after, especially as an Oracle that we are building into the time mystery, you're going to really be able to actually do a lot more damage to your opponents than you think. Now, with Bloody Tears and Jagged Smile, the bite attack's negligible. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's not really going to be the primary means by which you go about dealing damage to your enemies. No, your primary concerns are going to be spellcasting, using your revelation abilities, or striking a target in melee using something like a spear, where you can get at least a little bit of a strength and a half bonus to damage, and preferably striking from reach, and maybe even getting in a quick little power attack if your target has a low enough armor class. So altogether, these make for a pretty significant combination right then and there. I mean, a +4 profane bonus to your spell save DCs is a significant jump. That, and since charisma is your primary spellcasting stat, and that is the stat we are focusing on keeping up really, really high numbers-wise, you're going to have some pretty difficult fear spells to resist all the way around. So advancing your opponents down this track from shaken to frightened up to panicked and helpless is going to be a fairly easy one overall, even if your target has a good will save score. But then we also need other ways to help with controlling the battlefield and assisting our allies, and to that we turn to Summon Monster 2. You summon creatures at a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet for every 2 levels, and you summon either one giant frog, small elemental, or a giant worker ant, or 1d3 creatures from the Summon Monster 1 list. Now, these are the 3 creatures from the Summon Monster 2 list that I think are going to be the most effective for you overall. Some guides rate the small elemental lower, but I actually kind of like them. None of these creatures really has the best damage output, but again, their role is to be flanking bonus providers, helping your rogues or vigilantes get their precision damage out in an effective manner, or absorbing the attacks from your opponents, or just generally messing with and disrupting their stratagems overall. And that's going to be the primary role that they have. But then we go on to another spell that has a great deal of utility to it, and that's Tears to Wine. Target 1 cubic feet per 2 levels of liquids that's within 10 feet of you, including poisonous, rotted, or otherwise contaminated liquids, tears, and seawater, and you turn it into mead or wine of average quality. However, it doesn't stop there. Drinking this grants a +2 enhancement bonus to all intelligence and wisdom-based skill checks. And this bonus increases to a +5 at caster level 9 or +10 at caster level 15. Those are significant boosts and jumps right there. Now, while intelligence and wisdom are listed blue here, they're stats that are left in the yellow, kind of low-ish priority kind of category. But the skills that these all run off of are still fairly useful skills, so if you wanted to change up your build and focus more into one of these stats alongside charisma, that's pretty viable all the way around, and this spell in particular builds off of that. However, even if you just follow this guide and go with keeping your intelligence and wisdom at a 10, getting a +2 enhancement bonus to all of those is great. And the fact that this is a 2nd level spell that scales as you level means that this is going to be useful well into your later levels, into your later career as an Oracle. Hell, even if you start a game as a level 15 Oracle, this is still going to be a great spell for you to pick up all the way around right there. And your bards and wizards and other such casters are going to adore you for having it. But then we come to another great spell, a pretty solid buff, and that's Ashen Path. Touch a living target creature, and for 10 minutes per level, they suffer no ill effects from airborne irritants and gain a +4 bonus on saves versus magic effects with these contaminants. The creature can see through obscuring effects caused by dense ash, smoke, or similar concealment up to 60 feet, though this does nothing to affect impairments that are due to lighting, so if it's dark out, you're still going to be stumbling around and dealing with that. The duration can be spread amongst targets, however, in 10-minute increments, so if you are level 6, that's 6 creatures potentially that you can divide this duration up amongst, and 10 minutes is a pretty solid debuff, it's a buff. That's a pretty solid buff to apply to your allies that's going to get you through probably a couple of combats pretty comfortably, especially if they're going to be back-to-back kind of encounters. But then we go from our 2nd level spells to a small selection of 3rd level spells that are going to be useful for you, and this first one is a classic. It comes up for any spellcaster that has it in their list. It's Dispel Magic. Pick a target in medium range, which is 100 feet plus 10 feet every level, either a creature or an item. Instantly counter another caster's spell, suppress the abilities of a magic item, or end an ongoing magical effect. You roll a 1d20, adding in your caster level, and compare to the highest spell level effect, which is 11 plus the spell's caster level. If you win on the roll, you end the effect, or you go down to the next effect if there is one. This spell takes instant effect with no allowance for spell resistance. This is great to have. This is the best debuff. If you're going to be counterspelling, this is going to be a great way for you to deal with opponents, or spellcasting opponents in that fashion. Now, given that you are a spontaneous spellcaster with a lower number of spells known, but a higher number of spell slots that you can use throughout the day, Dispel Magic works pretty well with you in that regard, so it's definitely something worth considering. Even if you're not going for the most effective build, this is still going to be a spell that's worth your time overall. But going on from there, the next 3rd level spell I would recommend is Deadly Juggernaut. Target yourself, and it lasts 1 minute per level. When you drop a target at least of equal hit dice -4, so if you're level 10, if you drop a target that's at least a 6 hit die creature to 0 hit points, you will gain a +1 luck bonus on attack, damage, and strength checks, strength skill checks, and damage reduction 2, for a max of a +5 bonus and a damage reduction 10. That's untyped and has no way of really overcoming it overall. That's a great defensive and offensive buff to have on yourself right there, especially since you're looking at getting in close with particular targets. If you spend a little bit of time dealing with some of the chaff in your way, this will get you at least a +1 bonus, and then to your attack, damage, your strength checks, and the like. This will help to shore up your ability to hit your more important targets. Now, again, this has to be targets that are at least within 4 levels of your level. They can't be any lower than 4 levels from you in order for this to take effect. So it may take a little bit of work, but by planning things out and working with the rest of your party, you can pretty easily get the killing blow on a couple of targets and then be able to move into the rest of the fight with a pretty solid buff in play as you time hop your way closer to the target, erasing a few from time, and then getting things ready to really annihilate that enemy spellcaster or big bad evil person when they come back into play. But then, moving on from there, we come to Summon Monster 3. Summon creatures at a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 levels. Summon either a Lantern Archon, a Leopard, or a Crocodile, or 1d3 creatures from the Summon Monster 2 list, or 1d4 plus 1 from Summon Monster 1 spells. Now, that number of monsters is pretty handy, although by this point, the creatures from the Summon Monster 1 list are probably not going to do a lot for you. The ones that you might consider would be bats, since they have blind sense that can help you narrow down where invisible targets are at and help you locate them in that fashion. The fact that you can summon multiples of them and they fly and have that mobility and that blind sense means that they are still going to be useful for getting into different positions to provide flanking bonuses to assist your rogues and the like, but even still, they're going to be fairly easy to quickly dispatch, so you're going to be leaning more into creatures from the Summon Monster 2 list more often than not. Just be in mind that can be part of your strategy there, depending on what the needs and the situation are. Just think about it a little bit and you'll come through just fine. But now, the next spell on hand here is a handy one called Bone Shaker. Target one living or undead creature with a skeleton within 100 feet plus 10 feet every level. Using a bone fetish, cause the skeleton of a creature to rattle, dealing 3d6 plus 1d6 points of damage for every 2 levels that you have. That's the 1d6 added for every 2 levels. And you also forcibly move the creature 5 feet. Now, undead creatures will take no damage, but this will force them to use a swift action to move their movement speed or attack a creature of your choice. Now, a fortitude save negates half the damage and the movement, and does the same for the undead. However, mindless undead do not get a save. And another important distinction to make here is that the 5-foot movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity. You can treat it like a 5-foot step where a target's being careful in that instance. However, the full movement that you can force undead to take does provoke attacks of opportunity, so that can set up a target, a fairly important target, for some pretty devastating damage, especially if you can move them through multiple allies' threatened areas to provoke those attacks of opportunity. Definitely a great spell to have there, and there's not a lot of, well, there's a weird mix-match and mishmash of spells that affect the undead in interesting ways. This is an interesting one that specifically called them out. But then we go on from there to the next 3rd level spell for Channel Vigor. For 1 round a level, focus the energy of your mind, body, and spirit to grant yourself one of the following bonuses, able to change as a move action each time. If you focus on your limbs, you gain the benefits of a haste spell. If you focus on your mind, you gain a +4 competence bonus on knowledge, perception, and ranged attack rolls. If you go with spirit, you gain a +6 competence bonus on will saves, bluff, and intimidate skill checks. Or on torso, you gain a +6 competence bonus on fortitude saves and concentration. Now, the reason why under Spirit will saves is listed as green is that you already have a good wisdom saving throw progression from your Oracle class, and you're not taking any penalties because your wisdom score is at least at a 10. But a +6 competence bonus to a save is still great, and because it's a competence bonus, this will stack with resistance bonuses, such as from a Cloak of Resistance or your resistance cantrip. Or orisons, however that word's pronounced as it's called for divine spellcasters. And then, of course, for torso, a +6 competence bonus on fortitude saves is great because your fortitude saves are terrible. So this is a pretty handy and pretty useful adaptable spell that you can use to redirect bonuses as needed from round to round. In a lot of instances, haste is probably going to benefit you the most. However, pay attention and adjust and react to the situation accordingly as it's presented to you. But as I said before, this is just a small selection of the spells available to you. Don't forget you have the various cure spells that are terrible for you at this progression. Honestly, just stick with Cure Light Wounds and ideally use Cure Light Wounds from a wand, not with your precious spell slots. But there are still so many other options that are incredibly useful for you, and there are going to be some that are very useful in specific situations, but don't really do much for you in a lot of others. Just take your time, read through them, and plan things out accordingly. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? What spells might you recommend for your fellow players out there? And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.